What's good, folks? It's Nightmare Frame here with a new video coming at you with a Last Epoch new player introduction guide. This is going to be a video introducing you to the basics of Last Epoch, as well as introducing people who've never played ARPGs into how they function. This video is here to help people get started, so if more experienced players think I missed anything that would be helpful to newer players, do leave it down in the comments section, as it will not only help them, but me as well. I will go over the basics of Last Epoch, and if there's anything that would need a specific video, then I will do one for that. In all ARPGs, you have classes that you can choose to play and build out to take them to the end game, so you can perfect the build and gear up for that particular league. Leagues or seasons, however you want to call them, depending where you come from, is a period where new mechanics are added to the game that spice it up, and only season or league specific things can be farmed during that period. Each character you make for that league or season will not carry over to the new season, so you have to make a new one each time, meaning you have to re-level and re-gear it. This is something that people who've never played RPGs found a bit, weird. And in terms of best classes, all are viable. There is no best end-all be-all class, so pick whichever one looks cool to you. Here we are in the character creation screen. You will have 5 different classes, and these are going to be your base classes. Starting from the left, you got the Sentinel, Rogue, Mage, Primalist, and the Acolyte. Just from the looks, you can tell what they're gonna do. But at the same time, these are just your base classes that can branch off into 3 different classes that will completely change how the character works. Unfortunately, there is no character creation. The only customization you have is the armor you wear or the skins that you buy. Now, each class has their own base skills. Of course, the Sentinel over here, you can see they have their base skills. The Rogue has their own skills, and you can spec into these skills. They're pretty good at base. However, each one can branch out into 3 different subclasses, and these subclasses are called Masteries. The Sentinel can become a Void Knight, Forge Guard, and Paladin. Now, each subclass has its own specialty and passive bonuses. And if you played with a certain mastery for long enough and you find out maybe it's not your cup of tea, you can always swap it out, but at the cost of gold. And the higher your level, the more it costs. So I would suggest maybe trying to do a little bit of research on the class you're trying to play, or just, get a feel of the class itself before you decide on picking a mastery. So now let's move over to skills and figure out what they actually do and how they function. Now you can see in the middle, all these skills have a description and a scaling tag. Of course, you can press down Alt to get more information, because this will determine how much damage you will deal. And some of them can increase in damage from external buffs and other modifiers that will help boost the damage potential. You can look at my Shadow Cascades tooltip, it's at 39k, but it can get even stronger if I activate my other abilities and other scaling modifiers. For example, right now, from that little attack right now, you can see my damage goes up because I have specialized in this ability to have it scale from my shadows. And of course, the more shadows you have, the more damage you deal. For example, right here, this increases my shadow count. And you can see in the skill tree, I can create some shadows from here, and Synchronized Strike can create shadows. So yeah, more shadows, more damage. So let's go over this skill specialization. You can see I have 5 skills right here that are specialized. However, they don't correspond with the skills I have on my toolbar, because not all the skills that you're specializing in have to be active abilities. They can trigger off your other abilities. For example, if I were to equip Umbral Blades and fire it, that's what it does. I can cast it. That's how it normally looks like, right? After you've modified it a bit. However, I can activate Umbral Blades without even using Umbral Blades. There you go. See? And it's all 3 instantaneously. So I'd rather have other utilities on my skill bars. For example, a decoy. I'm not even specializing in decoy, but I'm using it as a decoy. So I can just put it down, and instead of enemies attacking me, it will go after the decoy. And this will give me time to reposition myself with my smoke bomb. Usually smoke bomb is just something you deploy, but when you modify it, it allows you to use it as a traversal skill. And that's all thanks to this passive node right here. So this is what skill specializations do. And you unlock each specialization slot at a certain level. For example, my main DPS ability is Shadow Cascade. And using Shadow Cascade by itself, that's all it does. If I combine it with my shadows, I get additional Shadow Cascade as it scales with shadows. Hence the name, because, you know, Shadow Cascade, shadows. You get it, guys? You get it? Cool. So this is the thing you have to take into consideration. There are skills that you don't have to master, but they're just there as utility. There are skills that you spec into to have you deal damage, but at the same time, they can be a utility ability. So that's a little quick rundown. Another thing is every skill has a scaling tag. For example, here, physical, melee, bow attack, dexterity. So this is a good segue into your attributes and modifiers. If you go to your character screen, you press C, right? If you're playing on mouse and keyboard, of course. I don't know for controller. I'm sorry, boys. You can see all of my stats. I have 58 dexterity, some vitality. I am not that smart. All of these things benefit my build. Resistances are also very important. Since every single one of my damaging abilities scales off dexterity, dexterity is going to be a huge bump to my damage. Not only that, dexterity also gives you other benefits. For example, it adds dodge rating. You are a rogue. You're all about dodging. You want to be evasive, so that's good. And you can see your damage stats, your defensive stats, minions if you're running minion stuff, and of course, others. You can see certain skills will increase your percentages and your damage goes up depending on what you use. During the campaign, you'll be met with Gray Diamond quests. These are side quests that reward you with bonus experience and grant you passive skill points and idle slots, so make sure you do them. Idols are going to be these little things that you equip on the side of your character window. These can give you elemental resistances, some passive bonuses, and even increase your damage output. And during the campaign, you'll be asked to join a faction. 2 different factions that offer different things, the Merchants Guild or the Circle of Fortune. Merchants Guild is all about trading. I've never joined it, so I don't know much about it. As I always go with the Circle of Fortune, as it's mostly about you farming your own gear. You play the game, build up favors, set up bounties for yourself to drop loot. If you don't like a faction, you can always leave and join the other, so you're not locked into it. Let's understand crafting in Last Epoch. To understand crafting, you do have to understand what certain things mean when you're looking at stats on your equipment. First things first, I want you to go to the settings menu. You go to gameplay. You're going to scroll down to this section right here and click on always show mod ranges. This is going to be very important to know what you're looking for in certain pieces of gear. Now you can see when I hover over a piece of gear, it shows you the ranges, the text in blue. That text in blue will show you the range of which these stats can roll into. Now we're looking at a purple piece of equipment, which I don't need to use because it's not for my build or my character at this moment. Starting from the top, you'll see its base stats. These base stats are called implicits, similar to what you'll see on other pieces of gear. You can see right there that amulet has increased critical strike chance. That's the implicit. This belt will give you mana, potion slots, and this sword will give you melee damage. These are all the implicits. These are the predetermined stats that these pieces of gear will come with. And then at the bottom, you'll have your affixes. Affixes are split into 2 categories: your prefixes and suffixes. Prefixes are usually about the damage type and attack speed, while the suffixes will aid the type of damage you deal while also giving you some utility. For example, this is a cold weapon. You can see at the top right there, it has melee cold damage, spell cold damage, and then the suffix has chance to chill on hits, which will synergize with cold weaponry. And of course, you have the utility, you heal on kill, which is not bad. Now, if you press F, usually on the keyboard, by default, if you're playing on mouse and keyboard, or you go to this little anvil here, this is your forge. Normal people will not try to look for an anvil, they'll just press F. And you'll see this window right here. Prefixes, affixes, your piece of gear, you'll have your glyphs and your runes. This is how you craft in Last Epoch. Dragging over a piece of gear or shift right click, whichever one is easier for you to do, you can see I can modify the current affixes available on this weapon. But look at the top right there. It says forging potential, 57. This number determines how many times I can slam this piece of gear. Slamming means, you know, crafting and putting in things. Sometimes you'll see a 5th stat here. Those are called sealed affixes. Let me see if I can actually show you right here. Perfect. My body armor. It has T4 sealed dexterity. That means I have an additional stat while having the other 4 main stats. If I want to seal a specific stat, I can use this glyph right here, which I do not have, and that will have a chance of putting that stat on the side. So you have another slot to add another prefix or suffix, whichever one you want. Now, if you want to change one of your stats, you can use Glyph of Chaos. This will randomly change the prefix or the suffix, and the Glyph of Order allows you to upgrade a stat without changing the mod range. Simple as that. I haven't gotten the green one yet, so I can't really tell you much about it. Now you can see this has 21 forging potential, while this one had 57. Of course, different pieces of gear will have different forging potential. At the same time, if you craft a piece of gear, you do consume forging potential until it hits 0. That means you can no longer modify that piece of equipment. Now, the tiers of your prefix and suffixes will go from 1 to 7. Now, if you look at the left side and the right side, I can upgrade this because I have these shards to actually upgrade this particular affix. Unfortunately, I don't have any more shards for these, so I can't really progress and take this to a higher tier. Now let's go over getting some of these affix shards. Now you saw on my armor, I couldn't upgrade Smoke Bomb or the Physical Penetration because I didn't have any of those affix shards to upgrade it further. If I want more affix shards, it either has to drop or I can extract it from pieces of gear. You can always look around at the merchant to see if they have any affixes that you want. You can buy the items, they're going to be very cheap, and then you dismantle them. How do you dismantle them? You need these things called Runes of Shattering. This is going to be one of your biggest gold sinks in the entire game, especially starting out. They do drop, but you're going to need a lot of them. What it does is break down the item so you can get their suffixes. But have a look at this piece of gear. Look at what it says right there on the prefix side. It's highlighted in purple. It gives you the spell lightning damage, and 2% lightning damage leads to health. Right at the bottom in the blue text, it will say, this is a drop-only affix. So if I use Rune of Shattering on this piece of gear, unfortunately, I will not get that affix. So sometimes you do have to get lucky. But if I use Runes of Shattering, I will destroy this item and get all the affixes that can be shattered. And every other rune is pretty self-explanatory. Now here's a cool thing in Last Epoch and pretty much every other ARPGs. Loot filters. If you press Shift F, you open up your loot filter. You can get here by pressing Escape, Settings, scrolling down under the gameplay, and to your loot filter. Now, loot filters are going to be very important for you because, again, this is an RPG. There's going to be loot littered everywhere, and it's going to be a bit hard for you to pick out what you want because you're going to be wasting time looking over every piece of gear. So that's why filters are going to be very important for you. For example, you can see right there little beams of light coming out of this chest, and they're not available for me because I filtered them out, because none of these work for me. I don't use bows, so I don't need that. All of this I don't need. How do we do a loot filter? Well, it's actually very easy. So right now we can add a rule. I'm going to keep this as simple as possible. You can go in depth if you want. So let's add a condition right here. Okay, my first condition is that I want an affix. Okay, this affix, I can search for it. Let's say Shadow Cascade. I can just search for it right like that. Now it will see class specific, drop down, increase damage per active Shadow Cascade, and level of Shadow Cascade. I can click that. Since I selected 2 affixes, the game is asking me, hey, do you want me to show that piece of gear with at least one of these or 2 of them? Just click one and we add that. And then it's right here. Now if I want to edit this, let's say this is Shadow Cascade. Of course, if I want to change the color, I can show recolor. Now let's say I want it to be this one. Confirm, select color. Now let's keep it that. So yeah, now I have this piece of gear right here, which has increased damage per Shadow Cascade. If I drop this, it's going to show, hey, look, that's that piece of gear that I wanted. Boom. And you pick it up and you bring out to the forge and dismantle this. Simple as that. Now, of course, if I want to hide something, you can see right there, you hide normal magic rare items that, don't function with my gear. Very customizable, very nice. Moving towards the end game of Last Epoch. Doing some dungeons and monoliths. Dungeons are specialized encounters that offer decent loot from boss-specific drops, and the means to get you into legendary crafting. Dungeons are going to be the red-colored waypoints available on your world map. To access the dungeons, you need dungeon keys, and the keys usually drop from various activities. And you can combine 3 different keys to make a portal charm, to skip the dungeon and go straight to the boss. However, if you don't know the mechanics of the fight, then I advise you to not do that right away. There's the Arena of Champions, but I haven't touched that, so I do apologize. I have no idea or any info on that. But monoliths are something that everyone will be spending most of their time in. After you've done the campaign, you'll be introduced to the monolith. If you came from PoE, this means mapping. You'll be taken into the End of Time, which is a place you'll visit now and again during your playthrough of the campaign. Now, with the monoliths, there are different timelines that branch out, and your goal is to reach the end and clear out Spirits of Fire, the Last Ruin, and the Age of Winter. Completing these will unlock the Empowered Monoliths, the true endgame. However, you don't have to complete every single timeline to get to the top. There are two paths generally, the left and the right. Going towards the right grants you character power called blessings, which are quite beneficial, while the left side is a slower progression for people to get used to the game, more loot orientated. As you can see, I just reached the monolith in this league, so I haven't unlocked it fully, but when I do, I will release a proper detailed guide on everything monolith. But in the meantime, each node will have a level progression, and your objective is to, of course, get to the top. However, within the monoliths, there are going to be quests. Make sure you do them to then challenge the boss of that monolith to progress to the next one. Anyway, folks, I do hope this video shed some light on some of the mechanics that you will encounter during your Last Epoch playthrough. And if it helped you out, please feel free to leave a like, share, and subscribe. For more content, streams, and so much more, do refer to the description. Thanks for watching, and as always, a peace. Bye-bye now.